All right, today we're tackling a big one, the fear of opening up and why we all build these emotional walls to protect ourselves. It's something that's super universal, but also feels incredibly personal, right? I mean, you know that exact moment, don't you? You're with someone you really trust, you're about to share something real, and then bam, this invisible wall just shoots up. You freeze, you pull back, and just like that, the moment's gone. So, what is that? Why on earth does that happen?
Well, here's the thing. It turns out that feeling isn't some kind of personal failure. Not at all. It's actually your brain and body just following a hidden set of instructions. Think of it like an unseen blueprint, one that was designed for a single purpose, to keep you safe from getting hurt emotionally.
And this brings us right to a huge human conflict, what our source material calls the paradox of silence. It's this wild idea that we are absolutely wired for connection, but at the same time, we're terrified of the one thing that actually makes it happen, being exposed. So, the official term for this whole thing is emotional avoidance. And listen, the key word here is pattern. This isn't just you deciding not to talk one time. No, it's this whole complex, interconnected system of your thoughts, your actions, even what's happening in your brain, all of it working together to stop you from being vulnerable. And this really gets to the heart of that internal tug of war, doesn't it? On one side, you've got these deep, fundamental needs we all have: intimacy, connection, just wanting to be understood. But on the other side, oh man, these powerful, primal fears of being rejected or feeling shame or losing control. So every single time you even think about opening up, you're caught in this negotiation between these two massive forces. Okay, so where in the world does this blueprint even come from? Let's peel back the layers a bit. We're going to look at the brain science and the psychology behind how these plans for avoidance get drawn up to begin with. First things first, let's meet the main architect of this whole fear response. It's a tiny, almond-shaped part of your brain called the amygdala. Seriously, just think of it as your own personal, super sensitive alarm system that's always on high alert. Now, here's what's absolutely fascinating and kind of crazy. That last point is key. To your amygdala, the threat of someone judging you or rejecting you feels exactly as dangerous as, say, facing down a tiger. So the second you think about sharing something personal, it just slams the alarm bell. And that's what triggers that classic fight or flight feeling. Your heart starts pounding, your palms get sweaty, and it's all because that little part of your brain literally can't tell the difference between social risk and real physical danger. But okay, it's not all just about our brain's wiring. Our personal history, especially our earliest relationships, that's the ink that writes the really specific rules right into our protective blueprint. And this is where something called attachment theory really shows us how it all works. Think back. Depending on how your parents or caregivers responded when you were a little kid, you learned a fundamental rule about expressing emotions. If your feelings were met with comfort and support, you learned, hey, this is safe. But if they were ignored, or worse, criticized, you learned a different rule. Suppressing my feelings is what keeps me safe. And man, those rules can stick with us for a lifetime. So this internal blueprint, it doesn't just sit there in a vacuum. Nope. It's constantly being reinforced, both by our own thoughts and by the world around us. It's like we're adding another brick to those emotional walls every single day. And you know what? A huge part of that reinforcement comes from our own inner voice. Our minds have a way of falling into these things psychologists call cognitive traps, like catastrophizing, where you just imagine the absolute worst case scenario. Or mind reading, where you're just sure they think your feelings are a weakness. And then there's overgeneralization, well, last time I opened up, it went badly, so it's always going to go badly. I mean, come on, do any of those sound a little too familiar? And it's not just in our heads, right? Society often gives us a pat on the back for this kind of avoidance. We hear phrases like, keep a stiff upper lip our entire lives. It just reinforces this idea that being in control of your emotions is a sign of strength, and that being vulnerable, well, that's something you should probably hide. But all this so-called safety, it comes at a really high price. Living inside that emotional fortress, yeah, it might feel protective, but it takes a massive toll on our lives. For starters, it messes with our health. Constantly bottling things up creates chronic stress, and that directly impacts our physical well-being. Next, it really strains our relationships. It's impossible to have true intimacy, so you end up with these superficial connections, and that puts a huge strain on the people you care about the most. And finally, and this one might be the most important, by never showing all of who we are, we end up silencing our true self. So the main takeaway here is that this isn't a victimless strategy. The research is crystal clear. Chronic avoidance is directly linked to more anxiety and depression, to physical stuff like headaches and fatigue, to profound loneliness, and to this vicious cycle of shame that just makes you want to hide even more. Okay, so that's the problem. But here's the really good news. A blueprint can be rewritten. We are not stuck with these patterns forever. So let's get into the practical tools we can actually use to start drawing up some new plans for connection. The source material gives us this awesome, totally doable 4-step process. Okay, step 1, just name the emotion. Seriously, just identifying what you feel helps calm everything down. Step 2, question the fear. Challenge those cognitive traps by asking yourself, okay, but what's the actual evidence here? Step 3, share a small risk. This is all about gradual exposure. Start with something small with someone you trust. And finally, step 4, regulate your body. A few slow, deep breaths can literally tell that brain alarm system of yours to chill out. And this, right here, is the most hopeful part of this entire conversation. Our brains can change. They're plastic. Just like the quote says, simply being aware of how all these mechanisms work, just understanding your own blueprint, is the absolute first step toward consciously rewiring your brain. You can actually rewire it for connection instead of just for protection. Which kind of leaves us with one last question to think about. We build these impressive fortresses to keep ourselves safe, right? But at the end of the day, what fortress is really worth more than a true, authentic connection?